Block of assets, section 2, subsection 11. Now, we've discussed in past that depreciation is one of the important things which is important for every business. Why? Because depreciation is allowed as a deduction against your taxable income, right? Now, depreciation is allowed on various assets, right? You have buildings on which depreciation is allowed. You have plant and machinery on which depreciation is allowed. You have furniture and fixtures on which depreciation is allowed. And you have intangibles on which depreciation is allowed, right? Now, basically, when you allow depreciation on various assets, right, these are categorized in Income Tax Act into different blocks, right? So what is the meaning of block? Block, insofar as income tax is concerned, can be a group or a class of assets. So let's say building can be one block, right? Plant and machinery can be another block. Furniture and fixture can be another block, right? So these are different blocks based on their classification. Now, within each of these blocks, there are other blocks as well, right? So let's say there are different types of buildings which could be there. Let's say residential buildings and non-residential building, right? Similarly, for plant and machinery also, you can have different sets of blocks, right? What we mean by a block of asset, insofar as Income Tax Act is concerned, is a group of asset, okay, on which same percentage of depreciation is allowed. Now, what do you mean by this? This basically means that, let's say, for example, let me use a different color to point this out. Let's say you have these buildings which are residential buildings, okay, on which 5% depreciation is allowed, right? And then non-residential buildings, you are allowed 10% depreciation, right? So while building is one block, even within this building block, there are two separate blocks, one on which 5% depreciation is allowed and one on which 10% is allowed. So for income tax purposes, each of them by itself constitute a separate block. Why? Because it is one group of asset on which same percentage of depreciation is allowed. So when I say a group of asset, they have to have some common characteristics. Just because there could be some plant and machinery on which 10% depreciation is allowed does not mean that that plant and machinery and building which is allowed a depreciation of 10% will form a same group. No. First thing is, it has to be a group of asset, right? So let's say it's either building or plant and machinery or furniture. And then once it is falling within that group, even the depreciation has to be same for them, right? So let's understand the meaning of block of asset. A group of assets could be building, plant and machinery or furniture falling within a particular class. Okay, building is one class, plant and machinery is another class. Okay, so you have different types of assets classified under different groups and classes under the Income Tax Act, and comprising of either tangible assets, being building, plant and machinery or furniture, so you will have separate groups for each of these three, or intangible assets being know-how, patent, copyright, trademark, license, franchisee or any other business or commercial rights of similar nature. So these assets can be tangible, these assets can be intangible, right? The characteristics which runs common between them is that one, they form a part of a group of asset, and the second, in respect of which, now this is important, in respect of which the same percentage of depreciation is prescribed. So as I told you here, it is important that you fall within one particular group of asset, and within that group, the same percentage of depreciation is provided, right? If you fall under two different groups, building and plant and machinery, even though the rate of depreciation which is provided to you is common, okay? So let's say you have plant and machinery at 10% and you have building at 10%. They do not form a block of assets for the purpose of Income Tax Act. Right? Various blocks have different rates of depreciation. Right? So we'll give you a chart which will enlist what is the rate of depreciation on different type of assets. Let us move on to the next slide, please.